Welcome back. In this video, we'll continue working on sort of our reset, and we'll do a bunch of conditions for causing the the bird to reset here. So first of all, let's just play around a little bit with the power setting. We had hard-coded the force here to put at like 500, and we'll just sort of change that up so that it is a variable, make it a little bit better. And so maybe call it launch power. So I'm going to give it the variable name launch power, and of course that's now an error because we haven't defined it up here. So I'm going to come up into here, and we will make a I guess we'll make it a float. It could possibly be an integer as well, but a float, and I call that launch power. And if you want, you can always set that value so that it's not 0 at the beginning. We put 500 here, then it's initialized with that value 500. Now, we might talk before, about doing private and public. By default, these are all private variables. So therefore, first of all, you can't see them in the inspector. Okay, so when we go back to Unity, we can't see that in the inspector. The other thing is that you can't then change it by another piece of code, right? We can't have another script changing that value. Now, having said that, if you do want to be able to change the value in the in Unity, instead of making it public, you can do something called serialize field. Let's just make sure I got that right. Let's see, there we go. And if you do serialize field, then it becomes visible. It's still private, but it becomes visible in the inspector. So I'm just going to save that. We'll just take a look at that. So in Unity, once it compiles there, if I click on my red bird, eventually, you'll notice in the code here that launch power is available. So you can go in and change it. The default value there is 500 at the moment, but you can actually go in and change it, right? Good. So let's let's reset it for a variety of situations. So we reset it there if the y was greater than positive 10. We'll just sort of add if it's on the x, either both forward and backward. We'll just put some rough numbers in. We might want to change them up a little bit after. And also, somehow if it fell through the floor, we'll get it to reset. So I'll simply go back to where we had here, right? And I think the easiest thing to do is just put a series of ORs. So I'm just actually going to copy this just to make our lives easier. I'm going to paste that 3 times. And you can put them all on separate lines like that. That's fine. So I'm going to do, so this is greater than 10 on the y if it is less than, and we'll just put negative 10 here for the moment. And then we'll do for the x's as well. So greater than 10 is fine, and then less than negative 10. And we'll just have to get rid of that one extra or there as well. Whoops. Good. So, that little bit of code there, it just allow you to reset the scene, okay, if it gets beyond the x and beyond the y, positive and negative 10. And so that would just make it, almost like a little bit of a safeguard. Now, one thing that we also need to worry about is we want it to reset if the player sort of stops moving. So we have to be able to sort of detect that. So first what we'll do is create a Boolean that will detect if we've launched it, because obviously the bird isn't moving right at the start. So we can't just say if the bird's not moving, reset the game, or else it'll just constantly be resetting. So what we'll do first is, like I said, detect whether or not it's been launched. And we already kind of have that idea down here where we have, this was basically the launch here, right? We set the gravity scale to 1. So what we'll do is when that happens, we're going to create a variable, and it'll be a Boolean, so it'll be a true or false, and I'll call it bird launched. And you could put it is bird launched, and we'll set that to true. If I can type here, I can't type at the moment. We'll set that to true once he's been launched. So of course this is an error because we don't have a variable. So I'm just going to come over here, and we'll just create that. So this will be a bool, and we'll call it, what I call it, bird launched. Good. So this, and by default, it's set to false. Okay, so it will be set to false at the beginning, and then once we've launched it, it will be set to true. So that will let us kind of come in here and do a few other things. So when we take a look at this, we want to basically create another if statement here to check if the bird has been launched and then it's basically not moving. So we'll put that in here. So we'll put another little if statement, and the condition, there'll be sort of two conditions here. So if the bird launched is set to true, so if you don't put is equal to, you could do this, right? But you don't have to. This would indicate that it is true. So if the bird has been launched is true and it's not moving. And to say that, we can do the velocity, so sorry, the rb.2d, because we need the rigid body, so rb2d dot velocity dot, we can grab the magnitude, which is very easy, useful, because then it gets x, y, z, positive or negative, right? It's just taking the magnitude. So remember a negative would indicate direction. So we're not worried about the direction here. So we just get the value. And if that value is less than or equal to, now you could do 0, but you know, if it's just slightly wobbling and hardly moving, it's good to put in sort of a number just above 0, just in case. What we'll do then is we'll kind of create a timer. And we'll just sort of, we don't want it to, right when it stops, to sort of end the scene. So we'll just give it a little bit of a pause here. So I'm going to create another little variable, which will be a float, time stopped maybe. We'll call this stopped. So we'll start this time stopped, and we'll add just time, which is time.delta time, right? Now, of course, that variable here, time stopped, we need to come up here as well. So that will be a float, and we'll call that time stopped. And what we'll do is basically with this time stopped, it's going to increase. At a certain point, we'll get the game to reset. So we'll actually come here, and even though we had erased it earlier, we're going to put those pipes back in for that OR and put another condition. And so basically if the time stopped is, and this would be up to you here, I'm going to go with 3 seconds. But basically, if the time stopped is 3 seconds, then it should reset. So let's just take a look here. I'm going to save this up, and then we'll go back to Unity. I'll show you something else in Unity that's kind of useful. So just give it a second there. Let's see if it works. Now, this launch power, I might have to reduce it to make sure this works. So there's our bird. I'm going to bounce him to the ground, hopefully. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Does it reset? There, it reset, right? So, you know, if I bounce it, so obviously this one, he's going to go off the screen, right? So I have to sort of shoot him down a little bit. There, 1, 2, 3, and then it should reset, and there it is. Now you can actually see things happening a little bit better. Let me show you a little trick here. So click on the red bird. Up here, one of these here, there is actually a debug mode. And I didn't even know about this. So you click on this debug mode, things will sort of get a little bit more complex. But one thing that you'll notice in this bird controller, for example, the time stopped is there. And there's the bird launched. All those things that we didn't have are now sort of visible. So if I go back and play this, okay, there, so now you can see the time stopped going up, 3 seconds, then it reset. So that's actually a kind of a useful little thing. So you've got this normal and the debug mode. The debug one does cost stuff, so it's probably best not to leave it on all the time. But instead of doing, you know, debug logs and all that, this is actually kind of better. So don't forget about this. That's something, I think it must be new because I hadn't run into it before. Good. So I think that's got a pretty good start in terms of, you know, resetting the game. It's not perfect because we probably want to have something where we can, you know, hold on to the points and how many times you shot the bird and so on. But we've got a good start here in terms of being able to launch the bird, being able to sort of bring it back to its start point. And I think next what we'll do is we'll look at some obstacles here. So we'll get away from coding up the bird and create some obstacles in our game.